Hello everyone, Coming Clean here. I've finally completed all story missions and all expansion missions from Skylanders Spyro's adventure. This will not all be the last video I make about this particular game, but I do have some concluding thoughts that I want to make a video about. I have two main topics for today. Number one is the game too easy? And number two is, do you really need all 32 Skylanders to fully enjoy the game? I hope you enjoy the video. If you watched my content over the past few months, you know that I haven't exactly made a secret about that I like this game a lot. There are a few flaws to point out for sure, but it's not really fair to focus on them since the game is 10 years old and has had 5 sequels. Full disclosure first. Like I mentioned, I have completed all missions including the expansion packs, but I haven't attempted the speedrun challenges yet and I'm still missing a treasure here and there. I haven't plowed through every single heroic challenge either, but I do have a couple of Skylanders on max level. Some may argue that because of all this I haven't experienced the game to its fullest, but I'm not trying to deliver a final verdict or anything like that, I'm just sharing my concluding thoughts. Let's move on to the first point I wanted to address. Is the game too easy? I admit that I thought so once or twice, but it all comes down to what you define as easy. I would say that the game is lacking a setting to increase the combat difficulty for sure, but I know that this issue was fixed in the later games. It's also hard for the developer to balance the game difficulty since the number of lives the player has on each level is equivalent to the number of Skylands they have bought, so there's essentially a socio-economic perspective to consider too. Also, this is obviously a family game that is designed to be enjoyed by players of various ages and skill levels. I did a video a while back about the control scheme in Spyro's adventure where I discussed this particular topic further. There are other aspects of the game that can be deemed part of the challenge as well, like finding the perfect Skylander for each level speed challenge for example, which you'll need to do for 100% completion. Another thing that comes to mind is the LEGO games, that mostly are notoriously simple from the gameplay perspective. Finding all secrets on those games though requires a high level of dedication. This is true also for Spyro's adventure, since it's very likely that you miss a hidden item or two on the first playthrough. These are just a few examples on how players can be challenged in different ways. Let's not forget the rewarding feeling you get for other minor accomplishments either. Like when you finally figure out the optimal tactic to defeat the annoying shield-wielding knights that you encounter late in the game, or when you learn how to make the optimal approach to avoid the speedy swings of the trolls armed with axes. Sure, you would have survived the fight regardless, but the rewarding feeling of exiting the encounter unscathed is present nonetheless. Also, I think the game gains a lot by being on the easy side of the spectrum. It's the only way to let players switch between Skylanders frequently without being stumped by the enemies, for example. And let's not beat around the bush about the fact that some of the boss encounters and several of the heroic challenges are difficult. Even highly skilled players are likely to die and fail repeatedly. All that being said, the option to choose the difficulty was certainly a welcome addition in the sequels. If you liked this video so far, it would mean a lot to me if you checked out my other content as well, and if you like those videos too, maybe you even want to subscribe since I release content about Skylanders and other similar franchises every single week. Now, on to the second point I wanted to discuss. Is it necessary to buy all 32 Skylanders for this game? The answer to that question depends on what your goal is. Unlike other Skylanders games like Trap Team and Imaginators, collecting all characters for Spyro's adventure is actually both realistic and affordable. But is it necessary? Having a game save file that says 100% is a common goal people seem to have when collecting Skylanders. To accomplish that, you don't need 32 Skylanders, you need 8, one of each element. This will let you go through all elemental gates on each level, which in turn will let you collect all treasures. Every Skylander you add to your collection unlocks a heroic challenge that increases various stats for all Skylanders you complete that challenge with. Many of these challenges take place on the same levels though, so you're not really missing out on a lot of content if you're missing a few characters. Also, considering the game's difficulty, the stats increases from the challenges aren't all that necessary frankly. Except for increasing Prismaric's movement speed. That is totally necessary. A word of warning to all completionists out there. You might settle for only 8 Skylanders since that will give you 100% completion of the game on the save file. Be warned though that the heroic challenges you're missing and the empty rings on the Skylander collection board might annoy you just as much as a non-100% save file. It's basically just different ways of tricking your brain into thinking you should want more stuff, and which one works best differs from person to person. That being said, like I mentioned before, collecting all Skylanders from Spyro's Adventure is definitely doable. But doing the same for all games in the series will likely force you to take out a second mortgage on your house. One last point I like to make is that you are very unlikely to make the most out of your Skylanders if you try to play with all 32 of them on a single playthrough. You simply won't get enough experience for all of them by playing all the levels even a couple of times. It won't help you to grind it out further either, since experience points isn't the limiting factor when powering up your Skylanders. Gold is, that you use to buy new abilities for them. The biggest source for gold is the various treasure chests on each level, and they don't respawn on the second playthrough. You can grind for gold too after completing all the levels, but it takes considerably longer. If you play with too many Skylanders, there simply isn't enough gold to go around for all of them, and you're probably better off starting the game from the beginning on another save file. I would actually argue that 8 Skylanders isn't just what you need for 100% completion, it's also the sweet spot for the number of Skylanders that is appropriate to use on a single playthrough. Dividing the gold you find and experience points you get on each level would be more than enough to power them all up, not to feel you are playing with several underpowered characters rather than a handful of powerful ones. Also, many of the Skylanders are quite unique from each other and very enjoyable to play with. You may want to pick them up simply because of that reason. Also, you may have no issue with playing through the game again, and you can always use the characters in the sequels since they are all forwards compatible. Alright, that's all I wanted to discuss for now, so that will be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to subscribe for weekly content. My name is Coming Clean, and I will see you next time. Take care!